So make sure that you, please don't push that to the last minute. Do you have any questions? Or again, don't let it be an excuse that you don't have anybody, because I got somebody here at school that will get with you on that. So that's not an excuse. Any questions, comments, or concerns thus far? You're pushing it to about a week. You got a week left. Again, please don't be disrespectful and ask this person to do it at the very last minute. That's on you. That's not on them. Don't do that. No questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. All right. Fantastic. Let's do it. Hold on. Trying to multitask. It's not going well so far. All right, bell ringer question says, what happened on November 22nd, 1963, and what are some conspiracy theories surrounding that event? Obviously, that was our very big topic from yesterday, getting into conspiracy theories. Today, we'll finish talking about the one on the moon landing. So what does happen November 22nd, 1963? JFK's assassination, yes, he's in Dallas, Texas, on a parade route when it happens. Let's talk specifically about what are some of the conspiracy theories around his assassination. Throw some at me. What we got? Oh, Lord have mercy. Right, yeah, no, that doesn't even make the top 10 out of all the conspiracy theories. That one's pretty low on the totem pole based on the hard facts that we do have. So what are the big ones? All right, the idea of multiple shooters. What's another one? Magic bullet theory. That's the one we looked at yesterday. Yeah, that the mob was in on it. That was another one. That one's probably the more prevalent, the one that PBS did like a whole special on it several years back, saying that now there's new information, people thinking that possibly LBJ being in on it. All about communism and containment, the Cold War, all the C words on that one. There was one more. Why is it that I can't? Oh, well, anyway, that's good enough. You don't need to list all of them. Just give me a few.
Good morning. If you are a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader and you have not been in registration for next year, please come during this period. Once again, if you are a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader who has not been in registration for next year, please come to the front office now.
Okay, all right, so as quick and as fast as possible, we do have a few things to hit as far as new info to get into for today. We got to talk about what's going down. LBJ, so again, we got to talk about that transition. And it's more important to talk about the transition today because not only does it wrap us up with 24, but it also gets us into civil rights, because LBJ will be president for a majority of what goes down with civil rights in the 1960s. Not that Kennedy's not there getting us started, but again, let's talk about what goes down with LBJ. Some interesting, fun facts about LBJ. He's not our tallest president, but he does make the top 3. He is a Southern Democrat, even though he does not side with the Dixiecrats specifically. He does help Kennedy to get Southern Democrat votes during the 1960 election. So we know that his initials is what I meant to say. His initials stand for Lyndon Baines Johnson. Here is a fun fact. So not only does he have those initials, his wife, her initials are LBJ. Not because of it's her legal name, she just goes by Lady Bird Johnson as like a nickname, not 100% sure why. But both his daughters have the initials LBJ, and both of their beagles have the initials of LBJ, all right, yes. And he actually has, so every president is known for having some sort of White House pet, usually multiple household pets. He had 2 beagles. And he got in trouble with PETA and some other animal rights society groups because there was a picture taken of him playing out in the White House lawn with the beagles, and he grabbed one of them and picked it up by its ears. And they lost their minds getting on to him for picking the dog up that way. And just being, I guess, a Southern raised farm atmosphere individual, he said, it's fine, it's good for him. So he just kind of pushed it off, no big deal. But anyway, Peter had a field day with that one. So he is VP for JFK. He was a Texas congressman prior to that. He had been in politics for a long time. And he was picked not just because he was a Southern Democrat to be the VP for Kennedy, but also because people said that he had a way of it's just talking to people and getting people's attention, and getting people to be on his side about things. Showed, again, remarkable ability to forge compromises. He's going to help pass a lot of things, especially in honor of JFK. He passes the Civil Rights Movement law in honor of JFK, a Voting Rights Act law in honor of JFK. Several things that are going to come up that he emphasizes to the people that JFK's memory will not be lost. It will not be forgotten. He is trying to help the nation mourn as well as move on past the assassination. He starts his new program, and it's going to be known as the Great Society. Good review question. What was Kennedy's policy? The New Frontier. Yeah, so make sure that you're adding on to this. Don't forget that. JFK's New Frontier. LBJ, Great Society. All right, and his Great Society plan, he is going to address one of the bigger topics that we said, and it's right here, declaring a war on poverty. He says, we see that a fourth of the nation is still at or below the poverty line and hasn't seen anything get better since what happened? Since the Great Depression. He said, there's too many people that have not ever recovered from that. And look how long ago that's been. That's been 30 years ago now. So he said, I am declaring a war on poverty. And it's pretty impressive. His statistics are pretty impressive and how he's able to build the economy back up, get jobs, get people back to work. We talked about this picture the other day. We said that this is making history, with LBJ being the first president to be sworn in by a female. So this is what's going down after JFK has officially been announced as dead, and we have to sign in LBJ as the new president. So here it is, talking about his war on poverty under his Great Society plan. He's going to put down several things that we still have today, so that's interesting. Again, in honor of JFK, he pushes through the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that is going to ban discrimination in all accounts. You can't discriminate based on, here's one, and I'm actually getting ready to talk about one that we'll talk about later on in the week. But the fact that you can't discriminate on anything, like if you're trying to sell your house, sell your property, there were whole entire neighborhoods and cities that were restricting who could purchase homes and land in certain areas. And we're like, no, you can't do stuff like that. You cannot discriminate based on race for any reason. Again, his unconditional war on poverty, he talks about that in his 1964 State of the Union address. Starts the Head Start program, still have that today. Head Start program is meant for children of lower class individuals to get them in pre-K programs. A lot of times these are the children that are they don't have somebody to sit down with them and start working on ABCs and 1, 2, 3s and reading with them and things like that. A lot of times because there's not a parent at home that has the time to do that with them. So the Head Start program is meant to literally give these kids a head start with their education. It is a pre-K program paid through state and local governments. The Job Corps, all right, getting people trained to get better jobs, better paying jobs. And he is going to run for his own term in office for the 1964 election. He will win the 1964 election. And it's pretty easy to see why when I tell you about the guy that is running against him. All right, very interesting individual. It's Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater is very much a conservative and Republican. And he is like, yeah, if you vote for me, I really believe that we just need to start dropping nukes on any country that doesn't agree with our plans and policies. We're like, hold up there, Barry. Slow your roll. All right. You just don't go nuking people, right? You just don't go out doing that. So anyway, needless to say, he didn't get the numbers, didn't impress people with dropping nukes. And so Johnson wins the 1964 election pretty easily after that. Again, a lot to be proud of. Look at all the things that he brings about through his Great Society agenda. He pushes for the standard of living. That's what SOL is for. All right, not just being out of luck. But he's talking about the standard of living, providing a better standard of living, better paying jobs, being able to not just meet your needs, but be able to start purchasing wants, right? So pushing for secondary education, public and private school funding, Medicare and Medicaid. Now, these are going to be on your unit test next week, and you need to make sure that you know the difference between the two. I got a helpful fun fact, good way, not necessarily a fact, but a helpful way to remember it. So I think about like this. So Medicare is caring for the elderly, right? A medical health plan to help those that are 65 and older. Whereas Medicaid is aiding, providing aid, trying to pull off words here, aiding those that are lower class Americans that need it to cover family medical expenses. Okay, so both of these come out under his Great Society plan and program. Medicare, caring for the elderly, Medicaid, aiding lower class families with health insurance. And then we also have HUD, still have HUD today, Housing and Urban Development in 1965. We've talked about this before, where we're trying to clean the slums up, clean the cities up. But again, we talked about the problem with that is that's usually knocking down the housing of those that could only afford these rundown buildings and apartments. So we are knocking it down, but we are also providing money for new low-income housing for them to be in cleaner, safer areas for their family. And then the National Endowment for the Humanities gets started up in 1965 as well to fund, again, writers and artists, again, to document the times. Very similar to what we talked about during the Great Depression. And we were talking about the Writers Guild providing money to writers and authors during very pivotal point in American history. Now, the 60s, what did we say the counterculture of the 60s are called? Those 50s, 60s, what? Hippies, yeah, so the 60s are the hippie generation, which should make sense because we are all about loving on the environment in the 60s. Now, it's good and bad, right? There's two sides to it. So the good news is that, yes, we are focusing on go green, recycle, renew, reuse, all the R's, right? But usually something bad has to happen for you to really push for change. And that's kind of what goes down. Like we realize that we're going to be in a, Wall-E situation, right? We're going to be burning up all our natural resources and be living in a spaceship. If we don't do something now, right? We realize how bad we're wasting, burning up our natural resources and all the things. So we start up all the things in the 1960s. You got the Water and Clean Air Quality Act of 1965, again, trying to work on environmental research. You've got Rachel Carson, who writes the book Silent Springs, again, talking about all that we're doing to the environment. Also trying to encourage the stop of using pesticides, very dangerous to both people and animals, DDT and things like that can be poisonous. And you should know this by now after all your science classes, that there are good insects, right? Like, I don't know, I always think of ladybugs. I just know that they're one of the good insects. Like you don't want to go killing off all the insects because there are some like bees and ladybugs that do good for the environment and eat other pests. Isn't that one thing ladybugs do? Don't they get rid of like bad pests too? Maybe, I don't remember, but anyway. So she's like, you got to be careful. Not only is this dangerous for people, if people were to eat it with it not being cleaned before that, other animals. So doing something that's good for the environment, environmental protection right there. There was another one down here. Oh, and Ralph Nader pushing to clean up large corporations because these large industries that are just pumping out all this junk into the atmosphere and causing like smog and causing acid rain because of all of these fumes and things that we're not oh, what is it called, like filtering everything out before it officially goes out in the environment. We don't have what is it called? I don't remember what it's called anymore. But at the very top where we're letting all the fumes out, we don't have like filters. That's not what I'm looking for, but you get the idea. That we're making sure that we're cleaning things up as much as possible. And there is a major accident, a nuclear accident that happens at a nuclear power plant. Has anybody ever seen? I love Julia Roberts. I'm another big fan of hers, not just Tom Hanks. We talked about him yesterday. But Julia Roberts is in the movie Erin Brockovich. It's an older movie, I know that. But anyway, the whole premise of the movie is that she fights for a town to where they had a nuclear waste leak to where it got in the groundwater and the people were drinking the groundwater and the company wasn't like coming clean about why they're paying these people off, but it was given like kids were, swimming in swimming pools of the groundwater they had been using were getting like cancer, like little girls getting ovarian cancer and all these things, and they were dying from all these diseases. And the company wasn't being honest about what happened, that they had a leak, and they're just trying to pay people off so they won't look into it to realize what went down to cause all these people getting sick. Now I realize, yes, that is a movie, but it was based off of an actual case that happened. But there's a nuclear spill that happens at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. Similar situation to where they had a leak. It got into the groundwater and they were having to like evacuate the town and let the townspeople know. And I mean, it was a big mess. So we obviously have to make sure that we are putting safety protocols in place and do whatever is necessary to make sure that we're using as clean energy and things like that as possible. Here's another one, a Fair Packaging and Labeling Act comes out in 1966, that you have to make sure that you tell the truth about what is inside your packages and products. And that's one good example is if you went to Walmart today and you purchased a toy, any toy, doesn't really matter what the toy is, but it should have like 1,000 labels on it, right? Like it should tell you what's included. It should tell you where it's made. It should tell you, you see mostly caution signs, right? Choking hazards, recommended for kids 3 and up, whatever. Well, this is why, because as time has gone on, we realize more and more needs to be advertised, even though I swear, I think the sign about needing batteries is something that they write in script at the very bottom and like bury it in some kind of black color, because I'm gonna trip and throat punch the next person that I see walk in with something like, I didn't know it needed batteries. Oh, it's because it's written in Arabic down here at the bottom. They don't even want you to know this thing needs batteries. They do that to me every time. Christmas comes every year. So excited. It needs batteries. It needs batteries. Of course it needs batteries. They lied to you, right? But anyway, but one of the biggest safety concerns that comes up in the 1960s is the fact that we realize that lead paint doesn't need to be on children's toys. And that is why a lot of products we stopped purchasing from China, because China, it was okay to still be using lead paint. But we were actually still using lead paint in our houses, like on walls and stuff. And I guess because apparently kids were licking the walls and they realized then, I guess Johnny's that bored. He's over there licking the bedroom wall and he's getting sick from it. It's because the paint has lead in it that's making little Johnny sick. Just tell your kid to stop licking walls and he'll be all right. But yeah, I mean, they had to realize that. And then not only did we have to stop making sure that lead paint was put on toys, but also houses and things like that. So we got to make improvements.
If you are a ninth, 10th, or 11th grader who is not filling next year, please come to the front office now. This is your last call. Please come to the front office now. Thank you.
Okay, so I think this is the last thing. Yeah. All right, last thing that I was going to talk about, and we've actually touched on this just a little bit already. We talked about the other day, actually, Chief Justice Earl Warren, sitting right here. Chief Justice Earl Warren, we talked about Warren the other day because he's one of the guys that is on the investigation into Kennedy's death and the assassination theories and everything. But Chief Justice Earl Warren comes on the scene at a very pivotal moment in history. We have a ton of major Supreme Court cases that start coming through in the 50s and into the 60s, some of which will change things forever. And they're all so much for the good. So again, here's a picture of our Supreme Court judges and our Supreme Court justice right there in the middle. Very conservative individuals, but they've got some major court cases. Brown versus Board of Education is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the week. Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, will reverse the Plessy versus Ferguson decision that we had way back in 1896. So 54 years later, we realize that it's not fair and equal to separate the races. But it all comes down to this: education. It is not fair to deny any child, any student, a sound basic education. You can't do that, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, gender. You can't do it. You cannot discriminate and deny any child a sound basic education. So that's what it all comes down to. But it was time. This was the pivotal moment in history when we realized the original decision was wrong. We need to reverse the decision, and this will forever change how we live society, because now we are officially integrating. There is no more separating. We are going to integrate. Now, it is going to be a long, hard fight. It is not something that you cannot, unfortunately, snap your fingers and change happen overnight. All right, it's going to get bad before it gets better. And that will lead us into the rest of this week. Mapp versus Ohio, 1961, the idea that you cannot use any illegally seized evidence in a court case. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So let's say that you have police officers come to your house, they've got a search warrant. They believe they saw somebody run in your neighborhood. They had stolen a 55-inch flat screen TV, saw him run down your neighborhood. They're checking houses looking for it, right? So let's say, and I hope this is not true for anything or anybody, they come in, again, they're looking for a 55 flat-inch big screen TV, right? Well, you know as well as I know that that 55-inch flat screen TV is not going to be inside your jewelry box. So obviously they should not be looking in places that it cannot be. But let's say that they do it anyway, and they find your marijuana. Yeah, that's where you hid it. You had put your earrings in there the other day along with your marijuana. Shame on you. But what? That's not the point. Not the point. Not the point. The point of the story is that they did find something that you're not supposed to have, and they did seize something that you are not supposed to have, but they cannot use it against you if they do find also the 55 flat-inch screen TV in your closet. That's what Mapp versus Ohio is saying, that they cannot use any illegally seized evidence against you in trial. And so, but anyway, that gets us into a whole different discussion. Now, it would be different if it is plain view. Plain view is a totally different situation as well. School grounds. I don't guess you even probably realized all the things, like a lot of your basic civil rights go out the window once you get on school grounds. It is a whole different ball game. Once you are on school grounds, we can check cars, book bags, lockers, because we are doing what is in the best interest of everyone on the school campus, teachers included. All right. So, and that goes back to the Supreme Court case of New Jersey versus TLO with students in schools. What about Gideon versus Wainwright, 1963? And it's a really good movie. I used to watch it all the time. But Gideon, God bless him, was just wrong place at the wrong time. Now, he did have some bad stuff on his record, so that didn't really work in his favor. But he had somebody blame him for a breaking and entering that he did not do. And he could not pay to have an attorney represent him in court. So you and I would probably be in the same situation. I don't think that either one of us would probably know the proper questions to ask in a court of law. And he didn't. So the judge was like, no, you can't say that. You can't word it like that. You can't badger the witness. And Gideon's like, I don't know what to say. I'm just trying, you know. And he's like, I can't afford a lawyer. Can you not provide one to me? And he's like, no, you have to have certain criteria. Either you have to be illiterate, or you have to be, I forget what the other one was. Now I can't remember. But anyway, he didn't meet the qualifications to be able to get a court-appointed attorney. So because he did a horrible job representing himself, and because he had a bad track record already, he already had multiple things on his record, they said he was guilty and gave him like 25 years in jail for something he did not do. So he does his research while he is in jail, writes a handwritten letter to the Supreme Court. They read it, they decide to hear his case, and not only do they decide that he needs a retrial, but they are trying to figure out how they need to change things. They reverse the decision, send his case back to court, give him an attorney, and the attorney proves not only is he innocent of that crime, but even points out that the witness that spoke against him was the one who did the crime. I mean, it's a pretty amazing movie. You got to watch it if you ever have the time. But anyway, so they realized right away that everybody deserves the right to an attorney. Because again, if you haven't been to court and if you have not been to law school, you know, how are you going to know the proper way to protect yourself and ask questions in a court of law? So that was a big case. And then most everybody knows Miranda versus Arizona, 1966, the right to be informed of what you're being accused of. Yeah, that was it. Okay. Was there anything else that I wanted to say? Oh, this was the last thing that I was going to point out before I stop and move on. So what does he do? His Great Society program and plan decreases and goes, I mean, cuts it in half. That's impressive. Cuts the poverty rate in half. That's how good he works with his new program. All right, I'm going to stop there because a lot of the other stuff gets us into the rest of this week and next week. Okay, so here's what I've got for you. Hold on, let me check my time. Okay, let's do this. We should be able to finish the packet pretty quickly. Let's finish the review sheet and the packet, and we'll go ahead and knock out that quiz. I don't know that we are going to have time for that conspiracy theory video, but we'll push just in case. Grab your review sheet and packet for me. Let's get that done and move on. Review sheet first, and then we'll hit that last page in your packet. All right, so 21, question 21 on Kennedy and the Cold War. So we'll knock that out really fast before we do the 24-3 guided reading. Okay, so 21 says, going back to yesterday, what was the finding of the Warren Commission? What did they decide in the JFK assassination case? Who? That Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin. That was their decision. Yeah, that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin. Okay. All right. 22. One of LBJ's first act as president was the law which banned discrimination in public places, and that is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Civil Rights Act of 1964. 23, in early 1964, LBJ will declare a war on what? Literally just talk about it. Poverty. Poverty. We ain't got to Vietnam yet, even though he will. Poverty. War on poverty. Good. 24, this program was designed to give disadvantaged children a chance to start school on a better academic footing. What do we call it? Head Start. There you go. Still have that today. Head Start. 25, this program asked for volunteers to serve in disadvantaged American communities. No. Now, if we were talking about in other countries, then yes, it would be. I tell you what, we're going to skip 25 because I didn't talk about that one today. I just now realized that that's my fault. Yeah. 26, this was the name of LBJ's platform. Great Society. Again, you better know that. Quiz question, test question. Great Society. Good deal. All right, 27 and 28, don't get these confused. 27 says this program created health care for the elderly. Medicare. Good. Medicare. And then 28, this program created health care for the poor and disabled. Medicaid. Fantastic. 29, Rachel Carson would write this book about the dangers of pesticides in our environment, which started a nationwide environmental movement. Named that book Silent Springs. Silent Springs. 30, he wrote and exposed the automobile industry and became a leader, consumer advocate. Did you catch his name? He was on the notes. I briefly mentioned him. Ralph Nader, R-A-L-P-H, Nader, N-A-D-A-R, Ralph Nader. 31, he was the controversial Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the 50s and 60s who oversaw a great deal of judicial activism. Named that Supreme Court Justice. Earl. Yep. Earl Warren. All right, last but not least, we looked at 4, but we're only going to talk about 2. 32, famous case which granted all persons accused of felonies an attorney. Just talk about it. Good. Gideon. Gideon versus Wainwright. It's called Gideon's Trumpet. It is an older movie, but it's still good. I used to watch it when I taught civics. Yeah. I'm actually going to go back to my PowerPoint because it's not spelled the way that it sounds, or at least I don't think it is. There, let me back it up really quick. Oh, I was going to be right. I always like to double check. Oh, there we go. Is that it? Yeah. G-I-D-E-O-N. I had it right in my head, but I always want to make sure. Yeah, Gideon versus Wainwright. And last but not least, number 33, which Supreme Court case required police to inform all suspects of their constitutional rights before being questioned? Miranda versus Arizona, 1966. Miranda versus Arizona. Alrighty, let's knock out that last page in your packet, and then we gotta knock out this quiz and roll on with our day. Okay, all right, guided reading 23-4. And then, oh yeah, we got that content vocabulary. We'll see. Okay, number 1, it says in 1962, author Michael Harrington claimed that the population of the truly poor in America numbered almost, I'm just going to give it to you, 50 million. We didn't really talk about the number. 50 million. Number 2, prior to becoming president, Lyndon Johnson had honed his leadership style through years of public service. For number 2, public service. Number 3, President Johnson's ability to do this had made him one of the most effective and powerful leaders in the history of the Senate. The answer is coalitions, but what it means by coalitions is just building relationships between senators and House representatives. But coalitions is the answer. Number 4, President Johnson felt that a wealthy, powerful government could and should try to improve lives. I'm trying to shorten that. It should be improve lives for citizens, but that's a lot to squeeze in. You just put improve lives to make it short. Number 5, when Johnson took office, he knew that any program linked to blank would be very popular. Who got assassinated? Yes. Any program associated or linked to JFK would be very popular. Number 6 says, Johnson ended his 1964 State of the Union address by declaring an unconditional war on poverty. There you go. You're going to hear that a lot in the next week. Number 7, by the summer of 1964, at Johnson's urging, Congress had passed. No, we didn't talk about this one. I won't have you put the initials for it, but it's the EOA. It's the Economic Opportunity Act. EOA. We talked about the parts, but I didn't ever call it that. Number 8, the blank encompassed a multitude of programs that Johnson hoped would make the United States a better place. Again, what was his policy? Great Society. Yep. All right, and you should know number 9, among the most significant programs passed between 1965 and 1968 were the healthcare systems of blank and blank. Medicare and Medicaid.
And for Medicare, they told us we were rocking chair.
Ah, that's cute. That's better than what I said.
And the Medicaid is something else, but
Right.
that's all I remember one of them.
Yeah, okay. Throwing shade on me.
Oh,
No, it's all right. It's all right. Hers is better. It's better. Okay. It's way cuter. It's fine. All right, number 10, the blank granted millions of dollars to public and private schools for textbooks, library materials, etc. We looked at it. It's the Secondary Education Act. Secondary Education Act gives like $1.6 million to schools. Secondary Education Act. Number 11, and we'll talk more about this next week too, but this is history being made. Number 11, Robert Weaver was the first African-American to serve in the cabinet, to serve in the president's cabinet, but you don't have to write that. You can just to serve in the cabinet. Number 12, the blank eliminated the national origin system established in the 1920s, which had given preference to Northern European immigrants, and that's the Immigration Act of 65. Immigration Act. And last but not least, number 13, Great Society programs such as the Department of Transportation, the Department of this, and the Project Blank have survived to this day. Who remembers what H or HUD stands for? HUD, HUD. Good, Housing and Urban Development. So HUD, HUD goes in one of them. And then what did we say the pre-K program was? Head Start. Those are your answers. HUD, HUD, and Head Start. Still have those today. Okay, all right. I didn't realize this until just now that we still have that content vocabulary. So we're going to run through this really quick. We're not really going to have time to do number 7. So let's run through 1 through 6, and then let's knock out that quiz. Like I said, 10 questions. You'll be done in a couple of minutes. All right, number 1, Kennedy believed that the U.S. should prepare for a blank by building up conventional troops and weapons to allow for a limited war without nuclear weapons. And this was actually, I believe, one of your IDs that you had to define. It's flexible response for number 1. Flexible response. Number 2, President Johnson used many tactics to build up a blank or a general agreement. Which word is general agreement? A consensus. Yeah, consensus for number 2. Number 3, President Kennedy voiced his concern about a suspected blank, the belief that the Soviet Union had more nuclear weapons than we did. Missile gap. Number 4, one of the Warren Court's most important decisions concerned this, or the method states used to draw up political districts based on changes in population. Reapportionment. Yeah, that takes you all the way back to civics and economics. Reapportionment. 5, the Cold War competition between the U.S. and Soviet Union over domination of space exploration was called space race. And last but not least, number 6, the judicial requirement of this states that laws may not treat individuals unfairly, and courts must follow proper procedures and rules when trying cases. That is due process. Yeah, we just don't have time. We gotta move on. Okay. All right, so clear it all off. As long as you're done, if you followed along from last Thursday through today, then you should be done with your packet. If you did it on paper, make sure your name is on it, and your review sheet. If you've got both of those done, make sure your name is on it. I will come pick it up when I give you your quiz. But then go ahead and put everything else up. We're gonna bust out this quiz, review, be done for it. Question. Yes, yeah, because that's all it is. It's just that list of IDs. Okay. All right, so let's talk about this quiz. Let's get it done. We're gonna roll through it super quick. Like I said, I don't know that it'll even take you a couple of minutes to do. All right, good review from yesterday. When was Kennedy assassinated?
November 22nd, 1962.
Yeah, that was your bell ringer. Hopefully that's still pretty fresh. That was your bell ringer question. All right, let's talk about the 2 policies. What was JFK's political policy? New Frontier. What was LBJ's? Great Society. Good. All right, when and where was JFK assassinated? Oh, we already did the when. Yeah, Dallas, Texas. All right, and who does the Warren Commission say was the assassin? Lee Harvey Oswald. Let's see. What agency does JFK help to create to push for our space exploration? We create NASA. What challenge does he issue? Man on the moon by the end of the decade. Fantastic. All right. Last couple of things. In the very early 60s, we have a new leader who comes into power in 1959 in Cuba. Who's that new leader? Fidel Castro. What is the failed invasion to where we try and arm rebels and send them back? A peace incident. And then for 13 long days in October of 1962, what went down? Cuban Missile Crisis. So let's talk about those leaders really quick. Who's president during the Cuban Missile Crisis? JFK. Who is over the Soviet Union? Nikita Khrushchev. Okay, there you go. Now, I didn't do it word for word, but that's all the information that's on here. Okay. All right, throw your name down on it. It'll take you a couple of minutes. And if you've got stuff for me to pick up, I will come get it as I make my rounds. No, we don't have time. We don't have time. We gotta do this. We gotta roll. All that matters. Oh, goodness.